Hi everyone, welcome back. Today is a very fun video. I'm going to be reviewing the brand new Makeup by Mario Ethereal Eyes Moonlight Palette. So many of you have asked me if I would be reviewing this, and you know me, you know I ordered this immediately as soon as it was available. This is one of my favorite brands. I love the original Ethereal Eyes palette. I still have it, so I did do some comparison swatches for you as well. So we're gonna be reviewing this palette. I'm gonna do a few different looks, probably 2, maybe 3. We'll just kind of see how it goes. If you're new here, my name is Blair. I do all kinds of beauty content here on YouTube. I would love for you to subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get into the video. I am so excited for this. I am just so happy that he has come out with a new version of the Ethereal Eyes palette. The original Ethereal Eyes, you may remember, came out for holiday in 2022. It was very popular. It sold out pretty quickly, and they did bring it back last year in 2023 for holiday for a limited time. Unfortunately, the original one is no longer available. These are limited edition palettes, which is sad and unfortunate because I just think this deserves to be permanent. So this was his original palette. As you can see, it's a little bit neutral, leaning warmer. The newer palette is neutral, leaning a bit cooler, although I think depending on what shades you use, there are a few shades that could lean a little bit warmer. But overall, I would say his original overall does lean a bit warmer than the new one. But this palette, if you've been around my channel for a while, you will know I talked this palette into the ground when it was available, and I still love it. It's one of my absolute favorites in my collection. It's definitely in my top 3, maybe even my top 2 of all palettes ever. So let's talk about this formula from Mario. If you've never used the mattes from these palettes, and even the mattes in his original palettes, the Master Matte 1 and 2, his matte formula is a buildable matte formula. So you will see probably in the swatches, and even when we get to the application, his matte shades are not intensely pigmented right away. Now you can build them up and get more intensity if that's what you're wanting, but they are more of, I don't want to say a sheer formula, but they are more of a sheer matte in comparison to Natasha Denona or Pat McGrath, things like that with very opaque, intense pigment right away. That is not this formula. So please don't buy this palette thinking that's what you're going to get. This is a much more soft, buildable, wearable type of eyeshadow formula, in my opinion. Now, is that going to be for everybody? No. Some people are going to love that. Some people are not going to love that. I am someone that loves that type of formula. I am not about a lot of pigment. I love anything, whether it's eyeshadows or another makeup product that's buildable, because to me, that gives you more control. If you mess up, it's going to be easier to fix, and it just allows you to really customize your makeup look with your products, you know? So this is the new palette. Obviously, we've got a lot of grays, we've got a black, we've got this blue right here, but we do have some lighter neutrals as well. So I do think this palette gives you more depth in terms of what you could do with it in comparison to the original, but you can still, I think, get like a pretty soft everyday look with this as well. So I think this was a great addition, and I'm just really happy that he's released a second version of this palette. I did already swatch this palette, and I'll go ahead and play those clips now. I swatched this by itself, which is the new Moonlight, and then I did swatch the original one, and I show you the comparison side by side. So I'll go ahead and play that now. Hopefully those swatches were helpful. I'm not always the best at swatching, but I did my best. Hopefully you could see it pretty well. Something I did just want to point out after swatching both the palettes side by side, I do think the formula is the same. I could just tell by the way they applied, the way they kind of blended as I was blending out the swatches. The matte formula is definitely the same. This palette also has 3 topper shades. So these 3 in this row right here, these are topper shimmer shades. So these don't have much of a base to them. They give you that wet look on your eyes, especially in low lighting or even in direct light. Those are going to give you that wet lid look, but they don't have a lot of base pigment. So you're not getting an opaque metallic shadow with these shades here. Now this one right here, this metallic, this one has a little bit more of a base to it, so you get a little bit more color. That one is not the sheer see-through base like these 3, which in his original palette, he also had a shade like that as well with 3 toppers. So these 3 in this palette were the same way. They have the sheer, like translucent base. And then he had this one shade here that's more opaque, metallic shimmer. The topper shades, so these 3 here, these are most comparable, I would say, to Urban Decay Moon Dust shadows. So these don't have that base pigment to them, but see in the light how they give you that wet look, but they don't have a lot of color to them. But I personally love that type of shadow, but just know that these do have glitter in them. So if you're not a big fan of glitter and that kind of wet look, you're probably not gonna love this kind of glitter topper formula from this palette. But this formula really reminds me of Urban Decay Moon Dust. In fact, let me just get one out and show you. All right, so this is Urban Decay Space Cowboy, and I'll swatch it next to the Mario. Okay, so Space Cowboy is on the top there and the Mario is on the bottom. So the shimmer is a little bit of a different tone in these. Space Cowboy, it's a little bit cooler looking. The bottom one's a little bit warmer, but you can see the overall like wet effect is very similar. This palette retails for $68. It's available now on Sephora and makeupbymario.com, and that is the price of the original palette from 2022 as well, which at least we didn't see a price increase, which I was very happy about. Now, let's go ahead and get into the looks. So I think the way I'm gonna do this is I'm gonna show my makeup and just kind of speed through it. I'll do my base and then we'll move into eye look number 1. I'll finish the makeup and show you the end look, and that's how it'll go for the 2 looks, maybe 3. We'll just kind of see how it goes with the first look. But I'm gonna go ahead and do the first part of my makeup and I'll be back for look number 1. All right, let's get into look number one. So I'm thinking I'm gonna stick in this area right here for this look, and then the next one we'll get into some of the deeper colors. So I'm first gonna take this shade right here, this kind of light taupey brown, and I'm gonna start by applying this in the crease. The blend on these is just so good. On these matte shadows, I would say the same thing about the original one. That's why I love this formula, because it's soft, it's easy to work with, it's buildable, it's easy to blend out. It's great. Now I'm gonna go into this shade. So this is the lightest matte shade in the palette. It's like a cream color, but something I wanted to point out about this shade that I didn't say earlier is this shade is a matte, but if you look closely, it has some shimmer in it. It's like the Patrick Ta Major Dimension 1 palette. He has a cream shade that looks almost exactly like this with the shimmer in it as well. It looks like a matte shadow, but then when you look close, it has really fine little shimmer particles in it. This shade is the same way. The shade in the original Ethereal Eyes palette was around the same tone, but it was all matte. There was no shimmer in it. So that's a definite difference. So I'm taking an A501 from BK Beauty now. And I'm going in this inner part of my lid and kind of trying to keep my eye open to go up to where we placed that other shade in the crease. Just like that, just to get some brightness there. That's actually one of my favorite shades from the Patrick Ta palette, the cream color with the shimmer in it. I really like that shade. So I'm glad he put one in here. All right, I'm gonna go back into this shade right here, and I switched brushes. So this is the 202 from BK Beauty, which is like a pointier tapered brush. And for this, I'm bringing just a little bit more of that color right here in this inner part of my eye. Now I'm gonna take this topper right here, so the middle one. It's kind of like a light golden topper. Typically I use my hand or my fingers with this, but I'm gonna try using the Refer number 2. Make sure you tap your brush off if you're worried about a lot of fallout. Tap the brush, and also something to keep in mind here, I'm just kind of putting this all over the lid. But something to keep in mind here is if you have oilier eyelids, I would probably recommend using a brush with these topper shades instead of trying to use your finger, just because your finger already has so many oils, and you know that can already make your lids oily before you've even finished your makeup. So keep that in mind too if you have really oily lids. I would say maybe don't use your finger with these because they apply fine with a brush. It's just something to keep in mind. All right, now I'm gonna take a little bit of this brown in the corner down here. This is kind of one of the only warmer looking shades in this palette. This brown, it's not like super warm, but it definitely is a little bit warmer. And I'm using the Refer 14 with this. And I'm just gonna lightly apply this in the outer corner. Obviously, if you wanted to keep this like really soft and minimal, if you're around my skin tone, you could just skip that step altogether and not even add that darker brown, but I'm gonna add a little and then go over it with a big crease brush. I'm gonna go into this shade again and apply that on the lower lash line. And honestly, that's probably going to be it for this first look because I want to keep this one pretty wearable, simple. So I'm gonna go ahead, finish up the rest of my makeup, and I'll be back. All right, this is look number one. Very easy, very neutral, very everyday appropriate. We just use one of the glitter toppers, but I love this look. This is the look I would do all the time. This is a very Blair kind of eye look. If you watch my videos a lot, the next look will do something a little bit more dramatic, but this is look number one. All right, let's get into look number two. Now this one, we're gonna use some of the deeper shades. So let's see, what should we start with here? I'm gonna take a little bit of the blue and a little bit of this gray right here. So I'm gonna kind of dip into both. I'm thinking about doing a little bit of a smokier look with those two kind of as the base. So I'm gonna take actually the Mario E6 brush. I'm gonna use this tiny little end here. And if you saw my Mario masterclass video that I did, this is how he did a smoky eye on the model in his masterclass that I went to at Sephora. He literally took his darker shades and he placed them kind of in the outer corner of the eye, like this. And then he took a really big fluffy brush with no product on it, and he just started blending up this way and out. He did this for a really, really long time. He just kind of blended and blended and blended. Blended over this way, blended up and out this way. And just keep going. So I'm kind of pulling over into the crease and kind of pulling up and out this way. So I'm just applying this where I want like the most intensity in terms of the color, and then blending. And the shadows really do blend well this way because these mattes are so easy to work with. Even these deeper colors, they're very blendable, very like beginner friendly, which is important. Okay, now I'm gonna go into this shade up here. So we haven't used this one yet. It's kind of a taupe like this, but this one's a little bit more like pinky taupe. So I'm using a BK Beauty 202 with that shade. And I'm gonna start applying this in the crease with my eye open so I can really see where I need it to be because I have more of a hooded eye. All right, now I think I'm gonna take this shade. So this is the metallic shade that has more of a base pigment to it. So it's not super, super sheer. It still has a little bit of sheerness to it, but it's not quite as sheer as the other three. And I'm gonna put this in the center and kind of tap it up and out. Still leaving that very inner part of the lid open for right now. I'm gonna go into the cream shade again down here, and I'm gonna tap just a little bit of that in this inner part of the lid where we don't really have any color. I either want to use the black and do a little bit of a liner, or we could even try like this more like navy metallic up here. Let's use the black. Gonna go into the black now with a little 204 brush from BK Beauty, and I'm gonna start kind of tapping this on the lash line, just kind of like the middle of the lash line out. I'm not gonna bring it all the way in. So I'm just kind of messily doing it. I'm not really trying to be precise with that. And then I'm gonna take the very first brush that we used and just kind of feather over it. Like I'm barely touching, I'm not using a lot of pressure, and just kind of lightly feathering over it. Then I'm gonna take an even smaller brush. So this is a 208 from BK Beauty, and I'm gonna go really, really close to the lash line here and line the eyes with the black. But I'm trying to get as close as I can to the lash line, kind of like in between the lashes. This is a really good black eyeshadow. It's pigmented, but it's just easy to work with. I really like it because black eyeshadows are not always easy to work with. For the lower lash line, I'm gonna mix these two. So this pinkier taupe and this gray. I'm just gonna take a little bit of both and apply that under or on the lower lash line. All right, I'm gonna go back in one more time with the pinky taupey color, and I'm gonna add a little bit more of that right here, kind of in this inner part under the front of my brow. Just add a little bit of that color there. Sometimes I just don't, or a lot of the time actually, I just don't really put shadow here, but I'm trying to get in the habit of doing it. And then the only other thing I was thinking I could do, I don't think the look really needs it honestly, but I'm gonna take just a tiny bit of the white topper, so that one right there, and I am gonna pop that in the inner corner of the eye. I think that's it for eyes. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish the rest of the makeup, and I'll be back to show you the finished look. All right, so this is look number 2. Not something I would go for like on an everyday basis, but I really like it. I think it's very smoky and pretty and very different for me, for sure. You can definitely really see the blue in it. A lot of the tones kind of look very gray, but that blue really does kind of hold the blue color, which I really like. And the gray kind of tones it down just slightly. That's why I mixed the blue and the gray to start out with. But yeah, I think this is really pretty and very different for me. So this is look number 2. All right, so my final thoughts on this palette is I love it. I think it's beautiful. I definitely recommend it if these colors speak to you and you think you would use something like this. The formula, now that I've used it, is definitely the same formula I loved from the original Ethereal Eyes palette. The shadows are just very user-friendly, very easy to work with. Even these deeper shades are very blendable and buildable. I love this color story. I honestly will probably use the lighter shades the most and maybe like the black over here for liner or something. I don't use blues and grays just a ton, but I do think they're beautiful. Like I'm glad I used them for this look because I think that looks great. They're just not colors that I use like on an everyday basis. But other than that, I think this is a gorgeous palette and I don't have anything bad to say about it. I was even noticing that even with these deeper colors, I barely had any fallout on my face. I had the slightest little bit of what looked like the black maybe that was like right here, but I was able to kind of brush it away. But very, very little fallout, which is pretty impressive with a formula like this with the glitter toppers. They have pieces of glitter in them. So you are most likely going to get a little bit of fallout with them just because of the nature of that type of shadow. But overall, the fallout is not bad at all. And even in the pan, when you dip your brush in, you do get a lot of kick up in the pan. But as long as you tap the brush off, I didn't have much of an issue at all with fallout on the face, which is another great thing. In terms of how it compares to the original one, you know, if you have the first one, do you need this one? I do think they're very different. I think you're going to get a very different look with the original as opposed to this new one. I do think the new one is more versatile in terms of the depth of the look that you can get. Like you can do very, very light every day or really use the black and the blue and the gray and get a deeper, smokier look like this. With this palette, you did have this row of browns here, but they're still not super, super deep. So I do think there's definitely more versatility with the Moonlight palette than the Ethereal, the original. But for me personally, I still prefer the color story of the original, and that's just a personal preference thing. It has nothing to do with the performance or the formula or anything like that because they're the same. They remind me of each other for sure. This is just more up my alley in terms of the tones with my skin tone, but that's just a personal preference thing. Formula-wise, they are both fantastic and I highly recommend it if this is something that you think you would use. I will use the Moonlight palette in another upcoming video, so if you want to see more of it, let me know in the comments and I'll definitely include it in another video, but I really love it. I'm not surprised. I love the first one and I love this one as well. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I will have all the products I used on my face for both looks listed in the description box and linked for you. They are affiliate links that support my channel when you shop through them. So thank you if you do use them. If you are new, I hope you'll subscribe and stick around. We would love to have you here. I do also have a membership, the BU Beauty Club. We do a lot of get ready with me's, lives over there. So if you like that type of content, the link to join is at the very top of the description box as well. And make sure you're following me over on Instagram at simply.blair and TikTok simply.blair1. And I will see you again very soon. Remember, simply be you.